Welcome to the SpiritWoke Podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The SpiritWoke Podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Friends, welcome back to the SpiritWoke Podcast. We have an exciting topic for you today, an exciting subject. We're going to be meeting Robyn Locke, who is going to talk about her personal story, and she's also going to share about a group of consciousness or conscious awareness that she is able to communicate and channel with that are called the elders. And so let me share a little bit about Robyn before we say hi to her, and then we're going to dig right in and get started. So Robyn is a gifted communicator. She's an inspirational speaker and an energy intuitive. She's co-authored 2 books and serves to bridge the physical with the non-physical world to provide insights given by the elders. The inspirational teachings, which are given by the elders, are shared in blog posts and video vignettes. Now, Robyn has 2 websites, Advanced Energetics, which provides insights from the elders, and her original website is nestled within the AE website. Now, Advanced Energetics was created in 2012. This was the original recommendation she had been given when insights had been sought to find her life's purpose and mission. And so, we are really excited about having Robyn here, and I want to make sure I'm able to give you the website address for Advanced Energetics. So it's advancedenergetics.org, so .org. So check that out. It's a really cool website with lots of great information on it. So with that being said, Robyn, welcome to the SpiritWoke Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Oh, it is a pleasure. It is a pleasure, and Robyn reached out to me, and it's wonderful because I love it when people who have heard about the podcast or listened to the podcast reach out and want to share their story. And I had a chance to speak with Robyn for over an hour the other day, and hear a little bit about her story and her gifts and abilities, and I couldn't wait to have her on the show. So, friends, you are in for a treat today. So, Robyn, why don't we get started off? A lot of folks who listen to this podcast, as I shared with you in our prior conversation, are on this spiritual journey. They're either just beginning the awakening journey, or their heads down in the midst of it. And so we're all here to learn together. And I think it really resonates when our guests share their stories of awakening. And so would you be kind enough to share with us your story?
Sure. So first I want to say that when you reach the point where you look upon life without the angst associated with it in so many ways, and when you see those things that cause you potentially problems or discouragement, that you recognize that these are all gifts that are given to redirect, and that you look upon life in a whimsical way as opposed to mentally, because it's the mental angst that does often cause the adversity within, and then you get ego involved, and it's a 2-man act. And so what I would suggest within what we move forward in discussing is that you do so from a contemplative and a loving posture and almost a whimsical way, so that you engage with life just a little bit differently, because then it changes your perspective. And in your perspective, everything can shift. And so it's an awesome thing to be in that space. So for me, I have, since my late 20s, always wanted more, and would read volume upon volume and book upon book and anything that was recommended. And I would literally read the books and put them on my shelf. I didn't enact any of the methodologies that were recommended because none of them really reached me at the place or the core that I was searching for. They were all wonderful, and they were all something that I wouldn't pass up on, but it never satisfied me. So I continually searched, and in 2010, 2011, 2012, in that area, I was shifting from I was at the crossroads professionally, and I knew that I needed to do something else in what I was doing. And I would pray, contemplate, meditate. I would do all the things that could align me in the way that I could discover what was my purpose, what was I supposed to be doing here, and couldn't I start doing that now? And in 2012, I started a little website called allisuptoyou.com. And I had, in 2005, 2006, I got really sick, and I was in the hospital for about 5 months. And at one point, as I was waking up in recovery, I was asked if I wanted to live. And it was a man's voice that I heard, and it was loud and clear, and I'll always remember it. And I was alone in the room, and I took that as a sign. And so I said, internally, I said, I don't know. I know this is going to be really a tough recovery, and I really don't know if I want to continue. And so I allowed myself 24 hours to contemplate all of that, and then I went to sleep. And when I woke up, I knew I wanted to live. And all my vital signs, which had been really low, and I guess what would have happened potentially is I could have slipped away. And my family members had already been called in to say goodbye, and my friends and all of that. And so I guess I surprised them because I decided I wanted to live, and all the vitals jumped up. And my recovery was about 2 years. And so All Is Up to You was given to me as what I might do when I asked for my purpose. And it was suggested that I start a website. At the time, I argued with that suggestion because I didn't know much about technology, and certainly did not feel like starting a website was my direction or path. And I argued quite adamantly about it for a time, and then I stopped and laughed and recognized that I'd been asking for direction. I was giving and being given direction, and now I was arguing with the direction that I'd been given. And so I set about and got that set up, and it's all about the different things that were a part of my life or had been a part of my life in the recovery. Not only the medications or the applications or the different medications, but also the different things that I engaged, like meditation, drinking lots of water, doing all those different steps. It was a roadmap, I had hoped, for those who might have lost. I ended up, they removed my colon, which I didn't know you could live without a colon, actually. And so I didn't know what to do with that, and I don't think the doctors did either. And so they kind of, when they released me from the hospital, they said, well, we've done as much as we can now you go and do. And so it was for me to figure out. And so there was a lot of trial and error within the process, and I didn't want anyone to go through because some of it was really painful. And so my intention was to see what I could put on the website that would allow others to not go through the journey that I had traveled, but to make it a little bit lighter for their benefit. And so then everything since then has been kind of a gift. I've traveled to a number of places, had a number of different jobs, but the jobs which I had always sought turned out not to be as I had envisioned them to be. And I know now that they were all redirections. It was the opportunity for me to experience what I had thought was the perfect job. And I met many lovely people. But I realized that the jobs weren't what I was to be doing. And it wasn't until I was in Boulder County in Colorado that maybe it's the confluence of the energies. Maybe it was just the right time. Maybe I wanted it badly enough that I then discovered who I'd been getting insights from. And they told me that I could refer to them as the elders, and I kind of argued a little bit about that because I said, it sounds so formal. You know, are you sure you want the elders? And they said it will do for a time. And in time, we may consider something else. But now I'm so far down the path that to consider calling them anything other than the elders would be odd to me.
Robyn, before we get into the elders, I want to ask you a couple of questions about what you just shared about your experience. So 2 questions for you. So number 1, did you before your health condition, were you already on the quote unquote spiritual path? And then the second question I have for you is before you started, I won't say recover, when you came back into recovery and you heard the voice, before that, were you unconscious? Did you have sort of did you see anything because, you know, I assume when you were being asked do you want to live, had you seen something but prior to that might have given you cause to not? Like, did you go to the other side? Did you see the light?
So let me address your second question first. When I was asked if I wanted to live, I was waking up in recovery, and I did not have, and I don't know really if you can qualify this as a near-death experience. I've been told that it counts, but I don't know what the proper definition of that is. But what happened was I was in recovery, and it was a small room, bright lights, and I'm trying to think if my hands had been restrained because I was trying to tell the doctors there that had stepped in the room about something, and they restrained me, and then they left. But I remember waking up at one point and hearing, "Do you want to live?" And at that point, I looked around the room, and there was no one in the room. I had monitors on me, and I knew I was alone. And so there wasn't the tunnel or any of those things. It was just a voice that sounded as if they were in the room, but there was no. It was a small enough room that there was. I knew that there was no one there, and I could look. I had Graves' disease also at the time, and my eyes had become so protruded that they thought my optic nerve would rupture and that I'd go blind. And so I was real careful about my eyes. And when I woke up in recovery, my eyes were wide open, and they had not put any kind of protection on my eyes. And so with those bright lights that were in the room, I think my immediate thought was, I need to have somebody cover my eyes or turn off this light so that I don't do damage to my eyes. And that was kind of how I awoke from surgery. And so no to that question. And then the spiritual path question, can you give that to me again? What was the...
Yeah, so prior to this experience of you getting sick and going into the hospital and hearing the voice asking you if you wanted to continue to live, were you already on a spiritual path, or did this voice kind of project you onto that journey, I should say?
I would say in my late 20s, I started kind of on my spiritual path. I would read everything. I would try to discover, and there were many points along the way that I thought I had discovered what was the ultimate path. But within all of those, I was always looking for more. I never settled for what appeared to be the end-all, be-all, even though I thought it might be. But I always remained open, I guess, and always sought just a little bit more. And so, yes, I had been a seeker for a long, long time. A great majority of my life, over 30 years. So, so I've been in that genre of looking, and specifically at that time, I don't know that I was on a definitive path, but it was always a path that I sought.
Awesome. I know it's a really special calling. I know I've shared on the podcast a number of times, and I'm sure the audience is really excited to hear it again. But that being sarcastic there, I started, my family wasn't religious. My dad was atheist, and my mom was sort of a spiritual hippy dippy, but not really a spiritual hippy dippy. I refer to myself now as a hippy dippy, but she was more into just meditation, right? That's she wasn't into all of the like abilities and all that other fun stuff that comes with, but she was definitely into transcendental meditation. My uncle, but I didn't grow up with my mom. I lived with my dad, and so I lived with an atheist most of my childhood. But from a very young age, I always had this desire to find God and to find the truth. And I would lay in bed at night in my home. And, I lived in South Florida at the time, and it was always raining and it was storming every night. That's just how it is in South Florida. It's always raining. And I would lay in bed and I would hear the thunder, and I would say, okay, Jesus, if you're God, I want you to send a bolt of lightning down right now. So I know that it's you. And then when that didn't happen, I would say, okay, Buddha, because at that point I thought Buddha was a god, and I would say, okay, Buddha, I would like to, same thing, and rinse and repeat. And I would go through all of the gods that I was aware of. And I went through this journey all the way. I mean, I'm still on the journey, but, because when do we ever reach the end of it? But yeah, I've always found, and I don't know if you've felt this way, Robyn, but, until really getting until sort of finding my truth, I always felt there was like this hole in my heart that just wouldn't be filled with anything else. And spirituality has always been that thing that really makes me feel whole. Anyway, I'm rambling now, but that was my experience, and I just jive with your journey in terms of just that discovery of just wanting to find, seeking, right?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, please.
So what's so beautiful about that is that I believe that we chose our parents, and we chose a lot of the life experience that we have, but we take detours sometimes. Sometimes we don't do the most direct route. And who's to say with the detour that you don't take in something beautiful that you wouldn't have experienced otherwise? So there's never a right or wrong path, but you might look at that experience as you had two different role models, right? You had one that was on one path and one that was on the other, to show you clear and distinct differences and choices, really, that existed for you. And so that essence of wanting to know soul awareness, wanting to know more, wanting to experience, was the whole that you recognized. And isn't that a gift? That because of the diversity, because of the difference between the two, that you postulated that you wanted more. I think that's awesome. Yeah.
And it was really a feeling, it was just a desire that I had. And, it's just interesting. And we've had a lot of guests on the show, and I've asked them the same question, and some people have felt that, and other people just kind of found their way into, the path, not so much a desire, but just sort of an instant awakening where something happened and it's like, oh my God, look at what all this stuff is, and so it's pretty cool. I just like hearing different people's journeys, and I know the audience does too. So
awesome.
So thank you for sharing that. So now you were about to get into the elders, so I'm excited to hear about this. So the elders told you to or requested that you call them the elders for a time, and then you shared that now, given the length of relationship that you've had in communicating with them, it would be ridiculous to call them anything else. And I think that's where you left off. So I would love, Robyn, would you tell us more about this amazing conscious awareness that you are connected to?
Sure. So probably still in 2012, I would get up because I was still, I had a day job, and I would get up at about 3 or 4, and I would meditate because I wanted to have that time. And it was time that you make within the day that you do from a loving posture, right? And so I would sit and ask questions. And I thought at the time I was communicating to my higher self. I didn't really know what it was that I was communicating to, but I knew that the words were beautiful. And that I felt very blessed to have such insights. And so, and it was interesting, one time I was meditating, and I thought, I just don't know how to meditate. I was so frustrated because I never really felt like I got into that space. And one day I was meditating and I sneezed. And when I sneezed, I jolted, and I was looking down on my body. So I must have done some sort of out of body thing, which I don't know that I don't know that I would know if I did it again, but I don't know that I did it again. But anyway, the only reason I knew that I did it then was because I sneezed. And so I looked down and saw myself and went, wow, that's pretty cool. And so anyway, I had a friend. I've always had people that I partner with or work with, or that I thought as my guru. And so I had contacted this friend of mine in Canada and said I was getting all these insights, and could she read them, and could she give me her sense of what was being said? And so she did, and she read a number of them, and she said, they're all really, I like the energy. It's all really good, except for this one response. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. It doesn't, and so it scared me, and I stopped doing it because I didn't want, so my understanding, I don't call this channeling. I call it an energetic connection. And I don't refer to them, and I just say this on the onset because I haven't heard anyone refer to it this way, but I just say that they're not entities. An entity is a being that was once in body form that has something more to say and wants to connect so that they can complete something that they, I believe, feel was unfinished. And so this is pure consciousness. This is a consciousness of love. And so anyway, so I stopped kind of doing all of that, and I'll just fast forward to more recent times, and I asked, because I saved all the writings that I'd gotten, and by that time I had gone from journaling to putting it into my computer because I can actually type faster on my laptop than I can write, and I had transcribed it and went back to the one she had questioned, and I asked them why she had the determination that she did of not aligning with the words. And they said it depends upon the frequency from which the words are read. So sometimes there are levels of understanding, and if you're reading it at a different level than it was given, sometimes you interpret the words differently. if that makes sense.
So you're saying that depending on the level of frequency that you're at could determine the level of you could misinterpret what's being said if you were not at a proper level of vibration, let's just call it. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not defining proper and improper. I'm saying that everyone has a perspective and everyone is energetically aligned from their level of consciousness. And it's not to say that one level is better than another. It's just saying that there are different levels. And I think within the English language, there's a little bit of a limitation because so much time when we give an understanding, there becomes a judgment that's formed around it. So I would say that this isn't meant for a judgment. This is meant for illumination, but it's the only way that I know how to give it, but not to give it from the level or the posture that someone isn't at the right level. But when you read words, so there's two little books that they've given. One's littler than the other. And the second book is the What If book of What Is. And within that book, the very first chapter is a recount of a past life that I had. And in it were levels of discernment that I was lacking in that embodiment and actually caused me to go out of embodiment. And so I carried a degree of that lack of discernment with me from that time forward into this time, and to a degree in every lifetime that I lived in between then and now. And so, which should resonate because I had to go to a girlfriend who was an intuitive to ask her to discern what I had instead of me recognizing and knowing what I had, right? So discernment is not only key for me, but it's key for everyone so that you have that inner alignment that you know to your core what is and what is not. And so I relegated my authority, in essence, my discernment to someone else, to another. And so in this lifetime, I was allowed to, and actually wasn't allowed, I asked a girlfriend to do a past life regression on me. And I'd only tried one other time, and it was with her, and I wasn't able to do it. And so I was told at one point that if I wanted to do that again, that I probably would be able to do it this time. And there are some other things that happened along the way, and that's not important in this discussion. But we did it, and we were near Vancouver on a little trip. And so she did this past life regression. And it was the most incredible experience that I don't know that I'd ever had, because I've had some pretty incredible experiences, but it was pretty awesome. And I actually saw the personality that I was in that other lifetime. And I felt her grief and felt her anguish. And she died at 19 at a very young age, but with a high degree of energy, because her role in that lifetime was in a temple, and she was working to bridge consciousness with consciousness, physical and non-physical consciousness together, which is pretty much what is occurring today. And so she held a lot of energy. And when I saw her in this regression, I went and wanted to embrace her and give her love because she felt abandoned. And I was being directed to move to a happier time because at the time I was going through this, tears were just rolling down my cheek because I felt such great anguish for what she was feeling. I could feel her. I could feel her energy. And I energetically embraced her. And when I did, this huge amount of energy, it was like fireworks, just sprung up and out because there had been an energetic matrix which had been created, which is described in the book. And it's, I hate to give tidbits, but it was the most amazing thing I'd ever experienced. And so when I returned back from Canada, that part of the chapter, which was the last chapter of the book, became the first chapter of the book. And I only had a couple of pages, and then they stopped, and I knew there wasn't anything more to be given at that point. But when I returned back home to Colorado at that point, I finished that chapter, and it was given then from the perspective of the elders, who were the ones that I was communicating with in that embodiment, and who have been with me in almost every lifetime that I've had, but not connected as we are today. So it's been a very long, a long path, a long road, and I'm so grateful that they kind of stuck it out with me, that we've reconnected, and that we're aligned in this way today.
Yeah, that's awesome. Robyn, I want to take a step back here and ask a question related to your past life regression, and so, you know, I've had a past life regression too, and I'm just curious, when you came out of hypnosis, I presume it was done through hypnosis, through hypnotherapy, right? You were regressed.
Yeah.
When you were brought back from your hypnotic trance, if you will, what was that feeling like for you? Like, what did you experience when you were either sitting in the chair or laying down and you opened your eyes? Like, I'm just curious what your experience was at that moment, because I know it can be a really special moment when you come out.
Well, so I wasn't in a hypnotic way. What she did was she had me look at my feet, and she just offered a lot of suggestion, and then asked what my shoes looked like, and what were the shoes. Could I describe the shoes that I was wearing? And we hit upon 2 or 3 embodiments, and then she said, let's skip all these other embodiments and go to the embodiment that it would have the most impact on your life today.
Okay.
And that's the one that brought me there. And so when I was within that state, I was actually conscious of it, and because I remembered it all. And I wrote it. What I did is I wrote it all down as soon as the experience passed, because I was like a waterworks, and I'd never. I'm not a big crier, and I don't get emotional very often. And to have uncontrollable, and I wasn't sobbing, but just tears. It was just constant tears, and it was that reconnection to self, really, a part of myself, and it was just awesome. I mean, the experience of the energy was the most incredible part of it. Something I've never experienced. Well, I have lately experienced something, but at that point, it was the most energy I'd ever experienced at that point, that was literally being released. It was like it had been held at bay. It was in a pocket. And in that connection, that energy was released, and it was released actually back to my soul. So much of what we're trying to do, and what people have thought as karma's gotten a little bit of a man-made shift to it. But what really is the purpose of all things is that wholeness of your soul essence. So your soul seeks to become whole. And so in that energy that was encapsulated and more or less captured in that energetic matrix, by reconnecting to the energy, the angst, the grief that was felt by a personality of my soul, when I connected to that once again, it then released. And I think that's what you're referencing. And it was the most incredible experience to that point in my life that I'd ever felt.
Yeah, that's great. That's really that's fascinating. So for those listening in who aren't familiar with past life regression, and when you go under hypnosis, you actually do remember everything, and you're completely conscious. You're just in a very relaxed state. So you actually have access to your conscious and your subconscious mind at the same time. And so it's almost like daydreaming being aware of what's going on around you. And it's a pretty cool experience. So I had the same thing when I came out. I still remember everything, and it's been, a year and a half now, and I can still see many of that parts of the past life in my mind. And so it's, I experienced something very similar when you come out of it, and it just changes your perspective on everything in a lot of ways, because for some of us, in my case, I kind of believed in past lives at that point, but I wasn't 100% sure. I had a past life reading, and I had read a lot of books on past lives. I read Dr. Michael Newton's book on Journey of Souls, and so I believed. I guess I should say I believed in it, but I wouldn't say that I knew it was real until I experienced the past life regression and saw it with my own third eye, I say, and that was pretty awesome. So Robyn, talk a little bit more about the elders. So do you, so what is it like when you connect with them, and what, and how do you work with them? What's the scenario, if you will?
So what I think my developed pattern is, although I really don't have a pattern, but if I had to say I had a pattern of contact, I wake up in the morning, and I love when I'm alert enough. I have different energies right now. So some nights I stay up really late, and if I do that, I'm a 8 or 9 hour a night sleeper. And so the 3 a.m. is hard when I've been up till 1. But I love 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'll ask questions. And I'm given insights based on my questions. And then sometimes I ask very open-ended questions where they can give what hasn't been contemplated by me or considered by me, that they can give them insights because I've asked an open-ended question. And sometimes I don't ask the obvious questions because I feel like it's my life and I need to know how to navigate my life without asking direction each step of the way. And I think their intention is to be a part of my life and to facilitate truly my purpose, because my purpose has shifted from what I thought it was within this life to what I know it to be in a more broad-based way from my original purpose, which was something I discovered not too long ago.
So when you say your original purpose versus what you know it to be today, what does that mean?
So we all know that we have a purpose or mission, and there's a purpose and mission that we've outlined before we've come into embodiment. But the key is, what do we know when we move out of embodiment and into that in-between time to be able to formulate our next mission? And so it's longer than we have time for today, but there's a video that is a little bit of a tutorial, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of information that discusses this on YouTube. And it's on the Advanced Energetics YouTube channel. And it gives insights and a meditation to open up your heart center so that you can discover, as opposed to your current mission, which my current mission was truth. And so within this life, I discovered many things that were not truth, not things that you would want to discover, deceit, intrigue, treachery, those sorts of things. And I had 3 specific ones that were very connected with me very deeply were very hurtful and kind of sad. But what they allowed me to see was, and to know, was the truth that I'm kind of like a truth seeker. And truth really resonates for me. And so not being truthful also really resonates for me. But if I had known, which I now do, that my purpose was something, that truth maybe was a component of the bigger picture, but wasn't the full picture at the time, because I didn't have a full deck to play with. In other words, I didn't know all the criteria in order to make the best, most comprehensive mission for this life. And so it's something that I would encourage everyone to listen to, because there's enough. It's about a 42-minute video. And then there's really a 15-minute follow-up that's just the meditation that you can do once you've gotten the information, so that you can align and open your heart center. But it's to me, it's a huge revelation to know that we have another mission, perhaps that is a component of the mission that we're leading within this life. And for those who don't know their mission within this life, you can ask for your original mission as opposed to this one, and go straight to the heart of what it was that you came into embodiment to know, do, and be. So isn't it an incredible thing to think that you entered this round of birth because you wanted to intrinsically know one thing, this aspect, this energy. So your purpose, of course, isn't a thing. It's the energy, the vibration, the essence of what you wanted to create, to understand, to fully feel and know. And that's why you took form. And so once you experience that and know the totality of it, then you've done what your soul essence came here to learn.
Got it. So what you're saying is, in other words, is we incarnate to experience something, but along the way, we get distracted because we're humans, and or we can get distracted. And through connecting with the elders, if we're not already on the path, we can determine. We can learn what that path is, so we can, not to use the word course correct improperly, but course correct and get back on what our original intent was.
I think so often when you're coming from pure consciousness, when you're essence and you're embodying, and you come into the densities of form, Earth is an incredible place, because just imagine that your experience and my experience, my sister's experience, one of your relatives' experience, we could all be in close proximity, yet each of our lives and each of us see life differently. And so you can have so many people in a very close proximity, although right now we have social distancing, but you have such a close proximity, and you could still have a very different experience from one to the other. And that's for a purpose. So your perspective allows you to see life the way you believe it to be. It may not be any of those things at all, but from your lens, your rose-colored glasses, your perspective gives you that filtered reality. And that's how everyone is. And so when you came into form initially, Earth was probably denser and more difficult, let's say, than you had imagined it when you were fluid and flowing in energy. And so coming into the densities of Earth are for a purpose, because you can feel your emotions so much more here than you can anywhere that I'm aware of. And so it allows you to know more intrinsically what it was you wanted to know. And in order to know what love is, say, for example, you have to know the opposite of love, because if you only knew love, what would that be compared to? And so you always need the counterbalance. You always need the opposite of that experience so that you have the full expansive understanding and awareness of all that is within that dynamic. And so when you came in initially, since it was probably a bit denser for sure, all those missions, perhaps, from those who embodied, did not come into complete fruition because they had different experiences. For me, it was this young girl who had an objective that she wanted to accomplish, and she discovered things that she didn't like within the core network that she was working with, and it disillusioned her. And it disillusioned her to the point where she ultimately died. And there are some nuances and things that I've learned along the way, but that's really not important at this point because the story is just a story. But if you recognize for her story, she was being given the counterbalance of what it was because her mission was service. Her mission was to be of worldwide service. And so when she discovered those who were not being truthful within the ranks of the group that she worked with physically, when she recognized that they weren't, and it wasn't many, it was just a few, but that they were giving falsities, she lost faith and she felt dishonest. And it caused her to lose she was a speaker, and it caused her to lose her speaking ability. And it took her breath away. And ultimately, she died from it. And so, know that, and I just realized that, like a few months ago, that exact experience was the counterbalance of what she had sought to experience so that she would have the countermeasure to know. And she didn't see it. She thought she had done so wrong by deceiving others, but she was 19 and they would have forgiven her. She didn't know. And if she had admitted that she didn't know and asked forgiveness, and I can't imagine anybody would have held her accountable, but she didn't see it that way. She thought she should have known. And so she needed to enlist greater discernment within her life. And so anyway, what came to me 3 years after having written that book with the elders, really transcribed it, but I did do editing, so I do take credit for it. But to recognize that very story was the countermeasure that she needed to have the full understanding of what she sought to experience. And so it was a gift, but she did not see it. So that's how we should look at all of our stories. Everyone has a story. And so often the energy of the story wants to be recreated. But the story is a story, and it's meant to get you to a place and point in time so that you know that that's not where you want to be, if it's, of course, a negative story. And so it serves its purpose to buoy you up, to make you look for a different direction, to guide you in a different path, but not to be belabored in the negativity of the story. You see?
Yeah, so essentially what you're saying in this 19-year-old was the past life that you saw. So what you're saying essentially is regardless of the situation that we have in this lifetime, be it what we judge it to be good or bad, or tough or easy, there's a reason for it, and it's to prepare us to learn the things that we had set out to do. And if we can look at life through that lens and not judge it and just accept it for what it is and move forward, then we're in a position to live out whatever mission it is that we had incarnated to do.
I would take it a step further, and I would say that if you can look upon life with a whimsical eye, if you can look upon those occurrences and almost pull yourself out like you're viewing a play, like you're viewing a movie, and you're the main character in that play or movie. And now you watch it with unimpassioned eyes. You look at it with not the emotion that the occurrence would elicit. Now you look with pure eyes and in that awareness, because now you're looking at it as awareness would look at a situation. And so when you see a situation in that vantage, and sometimes it's hard because we're in the middle of it, and sometimes you just have to go through the experience, but it's when you get to the point where you're wanting to retell your story, where you're wanting to recreate that which has no purpose anymore except to have given you navigation, to give you direction. So when you seek to recreate that story, you're actually recreating the energy. And oftentimes it's energy that you don't need to continue with, right? So you see the story as the gift that it was, and then you become the detective, you become the investigator, and you look at it all with whimsy and wonderment, and you look again. And it's when you do it without the critical mind's eye and the ego needing to be boosted and needing to be assured, and the neediness that exists from the ego, because ego and mind are both tools. And what we've done in this day is we've allowed the tools to take over the vessel. We're the captain of the ship. We're the captain of the vessel. The mind and the ego are meant to serve the awareness. But we've allowed the mind and the ego because they're louder, they're more demanding, they're more assertive. But you wait, and that's why you engage in meditation and postulation, and you listen and you wait and engage with the little voice that offers a more aligned choice, a long-term choice, one that isn't a knee-jerk reaction or reactionary choice. That's what you seek to engage with.
Yeah, that's deep. So, well, thank you for that, Robyn. It's hard to believe we've been talking almost an hour already. And so I want to be conscious of your time and our listeners' times. But number one, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the SpiritWoke Podcast. So many, many, many thanks to you. And I also want to share with the audience that Robyn will be back for more. So we're going to have Robyn back, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper and take different angles. And I'm looking forward to being able to present that to you folks. And Robyn, before we leave, are there any last words that you have for the audience? And any if the audience wants to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of you?
I guess the best way would be robyn@advancedenergetics.org is my email address. And I would encourage everyone to go visit our YouTube page, our YouTube channel, and actually go to the website and read some of the blog posts that the elders have given. They've given quite a few informational blogs that are very enlightening. And to just navigate around and see what you find. And over time, we're doing workshops and other adventures when when things lighten up a little bit outside. And people can come together once again. So until then, we'll be doing things by the internet. But just know that there's a path, and rediscover why you came here and rediscover that purpose, because in this time when there's so much more time to be in your homes and to choose wisely what you engage in, to look at some of this and see if it doesn't resonate for you.
That is fantastic. And also, if you go to spiritwoke.com, you can search for Robyn Locke, ROBYNLOCKE, and you will find her on the podcast. You'll find it on the website, and on that when you find her, you click on the link and you'll go to the page where her podcast hosted. And on that page, you'll find a link to her website. You'll find a link to her YouTube channel. And so that'll be easy for you to find all of that contact information for Robyn. And again, Robyn, thank you so much for being a guest today. And I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Well, you have a great rest of your week and whatever day it is that you're listening to this on, and we will talk very soon. Until then, be well and namaste.
Thanks for listening to the SpiritWoke Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, SpiritWoke.com, and connect with the SpiritWoke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search SpiritWoke. Join us next time for another edition of the SpiritWoke Podcast. Namaste.